Hey everybody. So here we are again. Another week, another episode of Wandavision, and oh my gosh, what an episode it was. We're so excited to get into this episode. So let me turn off my television. Yes, we're about to get into it, and I need people to get into it with. So I'm going to bring in my two friends that I'm doing recaps of WandaVision every week with. My good friend Thomas. Thomas. Oh, well, hello. How you doing, friend?
I'm doing great, Maui. This was just truly a fantastic episode of television, and like why we've been waiting for Marvel to start putting out some new stuff on Disney Plus. This episode is what we've been waiting for.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. And also to talk about WandaVision this week, my good friend Eric. Eric, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I agree. This episode was incredible.
It really
might
is.
be my favorite
really
one so far.
Yeah.
Maui, I do have to say, I am liking this new format. It's a little more like political talking heads.
Yes.
You know? Excuse me, can I get a word in? Can I get a word in, please?
Harump. Refresh me, because I watched it so early in the morning that it didn't have the title yet. For some reason, when they first release it, they only have it as chapter, and they wait until a little bit later to actually put the name. I don't know why they do it that way.
I don't know either. This is episode 4. We interrupt this program.
And I think that is a very apt title for this episode. Everybody who's watching, first of all, thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or follow us on Facebook to get access to all of these videos, all of our reviews and recaps of shows, our various other YouTube shows that we do. Please like and subscribe to Reflect Media to get access to all of that. And spoilers, everybody. This is a spoiler recap and review, so we are going to go into everything that happened, and the spoilers start from the very, very beginning. So if you do not want to be spoiled to this episode, please do not watch this right now. Go watch it and then come back and watch it on the replay. So we interrupt this broadcast. First scene, I'm going to split this into 3 segments today. 3 segments. Our first segment is Oh Snap. Oh snap. We see Geraldine, who is not Geraldine. It is revealed finally within the fiction. We knew this outside of the fiction, but within the fiction, we finally revealed that Geraldine is actually Monica Rambeau, and she was a victim of the snap. I hate calling it the blip, so I'm not calling it the blip.
No. As far as I'm aware, the snap is I think in fiction, the event where Thanos snaps his fingers is called the dusting, and everybody returning is called the blip.
I'm still not calling it the blip. It's a terrible name. I will call it the unsnapping before I call it.
You get when the first movie to come out after Endgame is Spider-Man. You get a comic. When you get a comic, a very funny movie, you're gonna get a funny name because it was kids, right? It was kids doing the reporting.
But the fact that that's what everybody calls it, I think is ridiculous. There's no way the media would end up calling it the blip.
Yeah, I was torn between being amused that they were referencing Spider-Man Far From Home and also kind of hating that name as well.
Yeah.
I think in Spider-Man Far From Home is a more apt name because the effect in Spider-Man Far From Home is this instantaneous like flash of light and everybody's back. As we see here, that's not what happens everywhere, or some MCU wires are a little crossed.
Yeah, I think it's a little cross wires there. Yeah. As Thomas is referencing, in Spider-Man Far From Home, we get a quick little clip of people coming back from the snap, and they're there.
It's very similar to the quantum tunnel disappearing Flash.
Yes,
it's a bright point of light, and then they're there. Whereas in WandaVision, it's a reverse dusting. They literally recongeal into the exact spots where they were. So, you know.
Yeah, and it's worth noticing that there is a slight difference there for sure.
Here's what we'll say. I'll chalk it up to the teacher supervisors on Peter's high school morning announcements editorializing because they felt it was too graphic to show dust recongealing, so they put in a little flash effect on top of it because they felt they couldn't show that to the students. So it's headcanon now. Come get me, Kevin Feige.
Come at me, bro. I love that Kitty just popped into the frame and actually saw Kitty's face instead of Kitty's asshole.
Yeah.
Well,
For once, that was nice.
Ash apparently wants to be on camera.
Yes, Ash.
As he always wants to when I'm on Zoom.
Indeed. So we find out right after she comes back, as everybody is freaking out, why she was in a hospital. She comes back in the hospital, and she was with her mom, who had just had surgery. I'm assuming her mother must have had some form of cancer or something, and she runs into the doctor that was handling her mother, and we find out that Monica has been dead for at least 3 years at this point. So that was pretty sad, and that Maria
has been dead for.
Yeah, sorry, I said Monica. Yeah, I mixed up.
Monica has been gone for 5.
Monica's been gone for 5. Maria lived for 2 more years.
Yeah.
Right. And we also find out that Maria is actually the founder of Sword, which I found very interesting. Eric, what did you think about that?
Yeah, that I was not expecting that. I mean, when they introduced Maria in Captain Marvel, like I didn't think she was going to be significant beyond just being Monica's mother, like setting up that little girl's destiny and what she was going to become. But it's interesting, I thought, that they chose to make Maria integral to events that are now happening in the current Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that. I thought it was really cool. I'm sad that it all happens off camera.
Right.
That we don't get the further adventures of Maria, because I love Maria Rambeau. She is my favorite part of that film of Captain Marvel. And so I'm sad. So hopefully maybe we get some flashbacks in Captain Marvel 2. I think she might be cast in Captain Marvel 2. I'll have to double check that.
Oh.
I know that Tiana Paris is definitely in Captain Marvel 2, but I need to double check to see if Maria Rambeau pops up again. Thomas, you got very squee.
Very squee.
When I mentioned Sword.
So now our 2 international, like global, like peacekeeping security forces were both founded by women in the MCU. Haley Atwell is the founder of
Agent Carter.
Agent Carter is the founder and the first director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and now Monica Rambeau is the founder of Sword. So like
Maria.
That is just, yes, Maria.
Yeah, the names are very similar.
We'll be doing that a
lot. I just think that is so cool. You know, Nick Fury ran S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's who we really associate with S.H.I.E.L.D., but knowing Marvel history, it's Peggy Carter. She founded S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of it. And so now to have a Black woman who was the leader and founder of this group is just, if I may use the turn of phrase, dope.
It is. So pushing forward into the plot, Monica, we find out that Monica actually works for Sword. Tries to go in, can't get in. The douchebag is just like, oh, your pass doesn't work, so you don't work here. You know, knowing that people, like literally half the world just came back. Maybe there's something to that.
There's some things we need to work on.
Right. You know, like that guy's demeanor. I mean, come on, bro. And we find she runs into an old friend of hers who is now the director of Sword, taking over for her mom, the interim director. Long time acting director, because it's been 3 years since Maria passed away, so that's interesting. And he explains that she is grounded. So I think this also kind of backdoor explains why we haven't heard of Sword very much, if at all, in the MCU up until now, is because they handle extraterrestrial stuff. They're usually off planet. And so she's ready to get back to work. She wants to probably get away from all this craziness back home, or, finding out that her mom has passed and whatnot. And he's like, sorry, you're grounded, which just means that she can only do terrestrial missions right now. So I think that that's probably, like I said, a clever way for them to work in the fact that we've never really heard or seen Sword in action. Thomas, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's going to be a bit of like retconny on Marvel's part, because we now know that if the events of Captain Marvel are the inciting incident for Sword, which in theory they are, they're also the inciting incident for the Avengers Initiative, which is what we modern day know as S.H.I.E.L.D.
Mm-hmm.
Because Nick Fury writes up the Avengers Initiative a good almost 20 years before the events of Iron Man. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just think they'll just kind of have the excuse me.
No, you're fine.
We'll just have the task of fitting in the story where we can, so that it doesn't create all these crazy loopholes. But I guess one of our a favorite loophole that could be used is, all right, I have to tell them I'm recording.
Someone is blowing up your cell. You're fine.
Our favorite loophole will be the Skrull will be Talos as Nick Fury.
Yes.
So I think almost anything can be explained by, well, it was Talos or Nick Fury.
I'm going to interrupt this broadcast because this is the best comments ever. My mother is in the chat right now, and she just said, "Wait." She waved, son, and then Eric waved. Hi, Mom.
Hi.
You'll have to meet my mom one day, Thomas, after this craziness is over, so that you get waves as well. She's known Eric since we were teenagers. So, but yeah, so she goes back to work. Her first assignment is some anomaly missing persons case.
It's assisting the FBI on a missing persons case.
Right, in New Jersey.
Yes.
She was not happy about this.
Right.
You're going to keep me on the ground, and you're going to send me to you're going to keep me on Earth, and you're going to send me to New Jersey.
Right. Also, I feel like you should never send someone who's in witness protection to New Jersey, because that's where all the mobsters are. So would you want to send them anywhere else but New Jersey? Just saying. And she gets there, and we meet Jimmy Woo, Randall Park, who we do know we'd if you watch with subtitles on, which I always do because I'm getting old and I think that my ears pick up frequencies differently, so I don't hear dialogue as well as I used to. So I put the subtitles on. So there I am admitting that I'm getting old. I knew that he was in it already because they have his name in the subtitles on when he's on the radio.
Yeah, I do it. I tend to. Sometimes I've been watching this, and as I'm going through West Wing for the first time, I turn them off when I feel like we're nearing some really cool reveals or plot stuff. So, but for WandaVision, I tend to turn them off because they go on a split second before things happen, and it's no, I want the reveals to happen. But I get it. I've got poor eyesight and stuff, so I like to have the audio descriptions on sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very excited that we have Jimmy Woo, unsung hero, Ant-Man and the Wasp.
And we get this, and I love Jimmy when he immediately does his close-up magic, which is something that he was doing in Ant-Man and the Wasp. So I love that little callback.
Fun fact for longtime comics fans, they may recognize Jimmy Woo from Marvel's Agents of Atlas series, or possibly if they go back even further to the horribly racist Yellow Claw comics of the 1950s that introduced the character.
Oh, I didn't know.
Jimmy Woo's got a long history in Marvel Comics.
Yeah, I didn't realize he went that far back. Fascinating. And so we see them talking to these two sheriffs, and they're the sheriffs are like, they're asking them about Westview, and Jimmy says, "Repeat what you said to me." And he's like, "I told this guy there is no Westview." They're literally standing next to a sign that says "Welcome to Westview," and Monica's like, "You're saying there's no Westview?" And she very looks at the sign. Okay. And where are you from again? And he goes, "Eastview," which I thought was amazing. And then we get this sequence where she sends a drone in, the drone disappears, so she goes up to it, and we get this cool effect, like when you're too close to the old school CRT TVs, that kind of staticky effect. And she touches it and then instantly gets sucked in, like a gravity pull, like sucks her into this energy field. Yeah, pretty cool sequence. Eric, what did you think about that sequence with Jimmy, with the meeting of Jimmy and Monica?
Oh, I love that entire sequence because it seemed like we were finally getting closer to answers of what exactly is going on this show. Because up to this point, we didn't even know if Westview was real or if this was Wanda's creation. And like watching that scene, I still wasn't sure at first. I was like, okay, so did she bring a town into existence, and that's why no one is acknowledging that it's real, or has she caused everyone to forget the town, which seemed to be the case once Jimmy and Monica started investigating. So,
I like when she comments.
Really,
I like when she comments. She says, "How come they don't have any awareness of Westview, but we do? Is it a proximity thing? I'm wondering, like, was it a pulse that went out at the time? How come some people know and some people don't? I'm assuming because they were close enough to the field that their memories of this town have been erased." And that's when and I should say that they specifically say that this isn't a missing persons case anymore. This is a missing town case. And Jimmy also says that he feels like he should not go towards it. He says to Monica, "Don't you feel it? Like it doesn't want you to go in," which I thought was very interesting too.
Yeah, it's very what it actually sounds a lot to me now that you say it like this is very magic like, very like the Hogwarts like barrier. You know what I mean? Where to the Muggles it's just this dilapidated castle, but anybody who knows what they're looking for can see right through it. And as we know, comic book like Scarlet Witch is a mutant, but her powers lie more in like the mystical than they do in whatever it is that she's doing in the MCU. Because like we clearly have Doctor Strange and magic, but we have yet to see in the MCU that Scarlet Witch's powers are that. They are, as we know them, are children of the Mind Stone, which is just this sort of cosmic which is a cosmic entity. But I think we're seeing now, particularly in this episode, we see several times a shift of us like getting more information that tells us, okay, Wanda's powers are tracking greater and larger than we ever knew them to be, and closer to their comic book origins.
It's really interesting, and I love all the questions that, like, as we're getting questions answered, we're getting new questions. Like, okay, so if that's the case, then what does this mean? So I'm really digging that. I love it also makes me think of Lost. It makes me think of Once Upon a Time had a similar thing with Storybrooke, this entire town that nobody could see or perceive. Doctor Who with the perception filter on the TARDIS. It's a pretty well-worn sci-fi trope.
Hitchhiker's Guide variant is my favorite. The somebody else's problem field. You put it on the ship and it becomes somebody else's problem. People just walk by it, not noticing.
Yeah. This leads us to our second act, which I have titled Dr. Lewis, I presume. We cut 24 hours later and we see that now a very large multi-governmental body task force has been sent outside to just outside Westville, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And they've also brought in all of these scientific experts from all sorts of different fields, including Darcy Lewis, who you may remember from Thor and Thor: The Dark World. She instantly they do the thing that you do, that trope that you see in movies where you bring the person that's obviously going to be figuring everything out, where she's obviously smarter than everyone. So she's like, okay, what fields are you in? And when everybody tells her, she's like, okay, so they don't know what's going on. And then she gets there and she's asking questions and they're saying like, I can't answer that. He's like, oh, so you don't know anything yet. I love that. I love that trope.
It's like not her first rodeo. You know what I mean? Like, where everybody else, like Jimmy was tangentially, was a tangent to the Ant-Man and Wasp events. But Darcy was in the thick of it for Thor and Dark World. So Darcy's been dealing with this for what, like a decade now?
Yeah, pretty much.
Darcy has experience at this point with otherworldly events and other,
especially in the Dark World.
Yeah, because Iron Man's 2008, and we're now squarely in 2023. Like Darcy's been doing this for a while, which I absolutely love. I love that we're bringing in these like third tier characters from the movies and putting them front and center in the show, but and it's tying back to stuff that's happened in the films. Now we are doing exactly what everybody wanted out of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and like barely got. We got a couple of nods here and there. Even in like Luke Cage, they were like, I got footage from the fight over New York. And it was like, the guy busted him on the street corner, which I was like, that's exactly what would happen in New York. Like you're right. But where's Iron Man doing a flyover? Like, that's all I need. But right now, I think they're giving me exactly what I need in these characters, filling out this story. Because the comic books do that all the time, where we take second and third tier characters and give them a whole book for a run. And there's so much room to play, and I love that.
Yeah, and I agree. Go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I definitely agree. This is what I can attest. This was what I was hoping for from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. And
you
like,
sort of got it in season 1.
Yeah, a little
bit, and then
it's always kind of doing its own thing. But like, what I really appreciated about the way they did this is that they didn't just have random FBI guy or astrophysicist. It was characters we knew and had already connected with in the films, and so like that gives us like an emotional investment in a movie in an episode in which really like Wanda and Vision barely appear. So like,
they're not in this a lot. Right, and everything that we do see is stuff that we've seen already, which we will get into in a little bit.
Right at the end there, we do get some new information.
So the other thing, the other real big thing in that opening sequence with Darcy is when she arrives on that on the makeshift base, and the military guy walks up and says, "Miss Lewis," and she corrects him and says, "Dr. Lewis," which is very timely with what we just saw happen in the news with that GOP lawmaker and Dr. Joe Biden.
It wasn't even a lawmaker; it was just somebody doing an opinion piece for the.
It was an opinion piece,
wasn't it? Or yeah.
I thought it was a GOP person that wrote the opinion, but
I'm sure he was a Republican. I don't think he was a lawmaker though. He was a professor, from what I remember.
Yeah. So there's that parallel, but also we've been getting these really obvious, like, in-your-face sexist things throughout the first 3 episodes with the commercials and, like, just kind of really just like slap you in the face sexist. And then in the real world, we get the reminder that this is not fiction. That is a real thing. I thought that was a very smart move on the writers to show that, like, no, men, you do this in the real world too. This is not just a fiction. So I like that. I think that was intentional on that, the thing the writers did, and I very much appreciate it.
And not just a fiction, but also not a relic of the 1950s. Like, it still happens. Like, we're still kind of dealing with that kind of attitude from a lot of men, and women have to put up with that, unfortunately.
Right.
And
while she's figuring everything out, because she's the one that figures out, like, all of the intelligence that they end up gathering comes from her. Everybody else is running around like a chicken with their heads cut off. She's the one that figures out how to how to hack into the broadcast using an older tube.
Figured out that it is a broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's start there. She's the one. She was our hand in our notebook at the end of the first episode. So
I love that. I love that.
I was like, please show me that it was Darcy. Yes.
What was the name of the type of energy that she mentioned? She says that there's an energy.
Background radiation, but it was like cosmic something background radiation.
Background radiation, which is not technobabble. It is an actual thing. There is just cosmic background radiation left over from the Big Bang, and it is observable, by modern day science.
Which is very interesting because we know that the Infinity Stones come from that very same energy. And so if we're finding out now that is her actual power, to be able to manipulate that energy, then that explains a lot about why she's able to disintegrate, to dismantle Vision's Mind Stone. It explains how even with a fully powered Infinity Gauntlet, she was able to go toe to toe with Thanos.
Right.
And it's a good way to explain her power set in the MCU in a way that fits with the MCU's method of magic.
Right. Well, see, but if it's cosmic background radiation, it's no longer magic, it's cosmic. It's like Thor.
Exactly. Which is their way of handling magic in the MCU. It's
magic and science together. The science we don't understand yet.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think even Doctor Strange's magic is more magic than it is. I know he's like there's alternate realities and things like that, but the the summoning of the whips and the things, it's still this thing that is not what the cosmic forces that Wanda pulls upon, or that like Thor is. While
I
Thor
disagree.
Okay. Well,
I disagree because so here's the thing, like they have to do all this incredible amount of studying to understand how to use the energies of the universe. I think it's just another path on the same thing as Thor or as Scarlet Witch. I think that the magic that you see in Doctor Strange is actually a similar sort of energy manipulation.
Well, it's all energy manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but you're saying it is the same energy that they're manipulating.
I think in theory, yes. I'd be interested to see, and I think we're going to get that answer because Scarlet Witch is in Multiverse of Madness. So I think we are going to get a better explanation of how her magic versus Doctor Strange's magic is different or similar.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see how that unfolds.
It could be that there is just like one form of this cosmic energy, and there's just different ways to tap into and manipulate it.
Yes, I think that it's different paths to the same pool of energy.
Sure, I can get behind that.
Yeah, so like magic and a cosmic being or a scientific character that's tapping into an energy field, like it all could be drawing from the same source ultimately then.
Mm-hmm. So moving on, we get this montage sequence with them actually starting to get all the answers, and I feel like it's us, right? It is the audience like trying to speculate. We see the Jimmy Woo's whiteboard where he's putting all the questions down, and it's all the questions we're asking. What's the significance of the hexagonal shape?
Why is it
the other questions on there?
Who are these people?
Is Vision dead? All the things we've been asking. Yeah.
Which I love.
Like that. He's like, this guy's dead. I mean, like I know a bunch of weird things have happened, but he's like dead, right?
It's so good. And then I also have to say I love the dynamic between Darcy and Jimmy Woo.
I think it's because they're such similar characters in terms of being like right next to our main, powers. Because if it was Ant-Man and Wasp, and then it was Jimmy Woo, and then it was Thor and Jane, and then it was Darcy. So they like know how to keep up with it in a way that other people don't. So I think the two of them just sort of gel together over unbeknownst to them, maybe like shared, shared trauma. It's not trauma. Well, maybe it is.
But like a shared experience with
experience. That's
paranormal.
Yeah. So I think it's a really cool sequence, and once again, we're seeing Darcy figuring out most of this stuff. We see Jimmy figure out some stuff too. He's starting to do background checks on all the people in there. They identify pretty much everybody. From what I saw on the wide shot of their board at the end of that,
I'm looking for it right now.
I think they figured out pretty much everyone's identity, except, and I felt that it stuck out pretty obviously that they had not figured out who Agnes was yet.
They don't. So I think we should specifically go with the ones that they tell us, and then like notice the ones that they don't. So they don't tell us who Agnes is, and they don't tell us who comic relief guy with the mustache.
They told us him. They told us
him. Did they give us that one?
Yeah, we got his identity. We got Deborah Jo Rupp's character and her husband. We got their, the Hearts. We got their identity. They didn't say Dottie, but I think I saw on the wide shot that they had figured out who Dottie was. But the only one that I really noticed that they hadn't figured out was Agnes. And then they also didn't reveal who was this witness protection FBI person.
Oh no, Agnes is on the board.
She's on the board, but if you look, she doesn't have they have everyone's driver's license.
Yeah, you're right.
I think when they figure out who their identity is, they don't know who she is yet.
We don't have Agnes. We do have Herb. And there's her husband and those two. So I'm trying to think, is there anybody?
But we don't know who the missing person is.
We don't know who the missing person is, and there's a couple, and on here, there's just a couple of ancillary people who were in in the backgrounds of shots, who I think we can probably assume are just other people who lived in the town.
Yeah.
But since they're not being interacted with on the daily, or at least in those 3 episodes, they don't. They're like, well, we'll deal with them later.
Yeah.
But I don't have Agnes.
Which I find very, very, very telling. So we also find out about the beekeeper. So they send a guy in underground to try and get access to this world, thinking that maybe the field does not extend to subterranean levels. Though Jimmy seems very skeptical about that. He's like, what makes you think that it's not? And they're like, well, what makes you think that it is? And I think that I would err with Jimmy's side of caution rather than just 100% blind.
Having watched a bunch of procedurals and things like that, usually this argument goes the other way, where the character that we connect with is the one who wants to do the risky thing. And we're when they go well, how do you know it isn't? And you're like, yeah. But this is, I find it interesting that this one is flipped, where we're like, no, please don't go in there. We know it's a bad idea. But yeah, they send in the beekeeper.
But he's not in a beekeeper suit. He's just in a hazmat suit, and he has this rope connected to them so they can draw him back in if they need to. And when he hits the field eventually, we see that as he walks through, the field changes what he's wearing to fit within the time period. So he goes from wearing this futuristic hazmat suit to a 1960s beekeeper suit, and the rope that is connected to him goes from this super thick tensile rope to an old school jump rope, which I remember when I was a little kid with all the little plastics.
That hit me real quick in the nostalgia.
Which is very, very interesting. Just kind of how powerful and complete this energy field is. It doesn't seem to ever waver, which I find very interesting. And we even see the moment when he kind of steps out of the sewer, and I love the effect that they do where everything's still in color, and then it color washes away to the black and white that we're used to in the fiction.
We do that in this episode, change the aspect ratio, and I didn't even notice. What?
I think it also raises some interesting questions, because if this world is indeed Wanda's creation, like that field changed him seemingly without her knowledge. Like, is she doing this subconsciously, or has she created some kind of spell that just automatically adjusts anyone that steps within it to fit within that world?
I'm digging deeper on my House of M, and she's not fully aware of the extent of what she's doing.
It seems like.
Yeah, she's not fully aware of it. She knows that she's got to protect like herself and Vision, and then eventually her children. But she is like lying to herself because she cannot handle either the death of Vision or the fact that like Vision cannot be recreated, like whatever the cause of this bubble is, like whatever inciting incident was, she's lying to herself that she can fix it, even though she clearly can't. Now I know we talked about the beekeeper, but we did actually jump the moment where we see where Darcy figures out that she can actually broadcast into the bubble.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, but we have not mentioned it in its place in the episode. Yeah, that was very interesting.
Yeah, because what's interesting is for this specifically is that this episode is running along in time with the first 3 episodes. Like, so we are covering, as they go on. They picked up Wanda's signal in the middle of the first episode somewhere. Which is interesting. So what had been happening before that? Did we have a pre-1950s sitcom? Like, could that have existed? Who knows?
Yeah, and that seemed to be like a pilot episode. They're just arriving into town, but when we actually get into the episode itself, it seems like they've been there for a while. So maybe there are episodes that we've missed.
Yeah, we don't know how long they've all been in there or what other forms this world has taken. Or if it just began with the 50s sitcom.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have Jimmy and they punch through, and we see that moment, and then we see from the real world perspective that first moment where Wanda sort of like resets the world after Jimmy breaks through with his voice, right? And we see that slight hitch and glitch on the video feed, and Darcy notices it as well. Because she's right there. That's now her task, is to watch sitcoms, which, hey, ain't a bad gig for a doctor.
And I will say I love that she's like vested. Like a little later on when she watches the birth of the twins, she's like, twins with a twist, and I love that. Yeah.
I just want to make sure we touched on that before, because we were.
Yeah, no, and I think that's an interesting scene. It's also notable that when they're watching, it's just like it glitches slightly, so they're not seeing everything. The broadcast is censoring itself. I'm wondering if that, off of what you just said, Eric, if that is some sort of defense mechanism so that they don't know the extent of what she's doing or how she is like subjugating these people to her will. So I found that interesting. And this leads
Wanda even aware that she's doing it.
I'm so happy you said that, Eric, because that leads us to our third arc in this, our final arc in this episode. Full Heisenberg. Heisenberg is a character from one of my favorite television shows of all time, Breaking Bad. And Walter White is the character, and there is a point in time in that show where he goes from being Walter White to fully submitting to being this kingpin. He goes full Heisenberg, which is his alter ego, his drug kingpin alter ego. And I think we see a moment of awareness, and we see it at the end of episode 3. We get to see a little bit more of it. We get to see what we didn't see in this episode. And I think that when Wanda snaps out of it, she's like, no, this is the world I'm living in now, and anybody that tries to come in and change it, fuck you. And so we see the rest of that exchange with her and Monica Rambeau, and it is terrifying. And the truth of what she did to her, I think, is a lot worse than what I thought she did. I thought she just made her disappear, and then she just plopped out. she threw her through multiple walls.
Yeah.
Right.
And as far as we know, she doesn't have powers yet.
Yeah, as far as we know,
that could have killed her.
Is a human. Yes. So we have that moment where we watch with Jimmy and Darcy watch that moment happen, and it cuts even further. Like when in episode 3, when we see it happen from Vision's perspective, it is this cut and she's gone, and then Wanda's like, "Oh, it's okay." They take the babies and they sit down and whatever. But from watching the broadcast perspective, Monica's there, and then it cuts to the end credits. Like it becomes another 2-3 minutes or something of time. That
almost like a blip. I know you hate that word, Maui.
Damn you, Eric. Damn you, Eric.
Phenomenon.
And then we get to watch. You're right, a very terrifying moment. But even Jimmy is really the audience surrogate, and he's going, "Wait, did she say Ultron?" Like, this is the first reference. This is the first time anybody's realizing that, like, the extent to which this is weird. You know, like they've all dealt with oddities, right? And yeah, this is an anomaly, but like, okay, somebody just said Ultron, which means that whatever's going on in there knows that it's not knows that it's wrong, or has sense enough to know about what's going on out here.
And we didn't talk about their discovery of the drone either, and like the significance of the little toy helicopter. Like that was explained finally also.
Right, and we see that also, just like with the beekeeper, it had a different form when it went
in that world. It was
trashed,
rewritten,
electric. Like that's why it's in the bush, because as soon as it transformed, it lost the ability to control itself and just fell.
Yeah, one would assume, and that's very interesting because also they noticed, like, well, why'd you colorize it? And she's like, I didn't. And so showing that maybe like there's some cracks starting to form.
Right, and also showing people on the outside that like this is not just broadcasting in black and white. It's literally that world in there is in black and white, except for that item, that drone that has just been found.
Yeah, right. And I think that's why Wanda changes it to color, because that's an easier facade to maintain.
Yeah.
If the plot lines of the sitcom are going to become more complex, because we're entering a more liberal way of telling stories on television between the 50s and the 70s, right? Like stories you tell in the 70s, you wouldn't dream of doing in the 50s.
Well, I think we're going 80s next.
Well, yes, 80s is next. The time where we change from color to black and white, or from black and white to color. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that could also. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that Wanda's like desire for the simplicity and the ease is a bit of like her subconscious going like, okay, girl, we need to take the mental strain off of controlling this thing. So the storylines we're going to create are going to be the real cut, dry, simple, boss is coming over for dinner stuff. But then you go into the 70s when it's, stuff, and we're doing babies, and we're doing, this doctor, and we're doing other sorts of things that take a lot more brain power. Yes, go ahead, Eric. Thank you.
I was just going to say that aside from that reasoning, also, if the outside world is starting to invade Wanda's little paradise and things are just randomly changing into color as reality is trying to assert itself, it's easier to drop the black and white and just, okay, everything's in color now. I don't have to like try and disguise this and change things, from a drone into a toy helicopter. I don't have to pretend like color is not a thing in this world. Like that's another aspect that like becomes easier for her to maintain the illusion then.
Yeah, and then so also after we see Monica get shot out, we see what she says after she gets shot out, and she says, "It's Wanda, it's all Wanda." And this is what I've been saying the whole time, is that I don't think it has anything to do with Mephisto. I don't understand or see how that could intersect in here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's the FBI missing person, and maybe they ran into each other and their two magics created this thing. I don't know, but I honestly don't see how Mephisto fits in this story. This seems to be a more intimate story than I think people realize.
Yeah.
At the outset, this is an intimate story about a woman that is processing a lot of trauma over a very short period of time between losing Pietro and losing Vision. So I found that interesting. And we see that trauma come to light because we see a little bit more about what happened in that scene, a little bit more of what we didn't see before. When she turns around, when Vision comes in and says, "Honey, where's Geraldine?" And when she turns around and looks at Vision, we see that grayed out, destroyed head, ripped out version from the end of Infinity War.
Yeah.
Which is very, very interesting. And then she shakes her head, and then you see him back normal. We see that she's just pushing that trauma deeper and deeper down, just trying to repress more and more and more. And she's like, "It's okay. I'm taking care of everything. Everything's okay." Right. It's just seeing her just like doubling down on the denial, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw this in here. I think she is like, in a macabre sense, Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
Like, I think she straight up has his corpse and like is using the magic to like reanimate it and color it. So in that moment, what we are literally seeing is like the bare minimum she could handle in that moment, because she was shocked by somebody, like, clearly this is somebody from outside of her bubble in here, and that's all she could maintain. And that's why it is surprising to her.
So interesting that you say that, because I was doing some research today, and apparently there is a deleted scene from Endgame. It was going to be I don't know if it's going to be in the movie proper or post-credit sequence, but there is a sequence that was supposed to be in Endgame where she goes to Wakanda and steals Vision's body.
Yeah, that definitely implies Vision is in fact dead, and like she hasn't truly resurrected him, only in her own mind.
Right. Yeah. So this is basically Weekend at Bernie's 2.
Yeah.
The MCU's version.
I was just sort of analyzing that last moment, because then he colorizes, they come downstairs, they pick up the babies, and that whole time we're still in 16 by 9. That whole time we're still in 16 by 9. And then
no laugh track.
You're right, no laugh track, but she's like, "It's okay, it's all right," or whatever. "This is our home," or, "Oh yeah," because he's like, "We can go anywhere." And she's like, "This is our home." And then she walks out of frame, and then he stands there for a minute and is like, you watch Paul Bettany like think through that moment, and then he settles on, "She's right." And that is when we go back to our square format, and they sit down and the episode ends. So as much as I think Vision's not back, I think Wanda, having been so intimate with him, has created like a super, super, super hyper lifelike image of him that it is capable of independent thought. And that's
I could see that for sure.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah,
100%.
Which could be our way to reviving Vision. Like that, like the Mind Stone part that we don't have anymore because the stone is gone. Wanda will be that, because it's Tony, it's Ultron, it's the Mind Stone. Now it's going to be Tony, Ultron, and Wanda. Like Wanda will be the thing that is able to bring Vision back. And that may just be me desperately wanting more Vision in the MCU.
I think that kind of comes down to whether WandaVision is going to get a second season, because
I think it's
was under the assumption that, like, towards the end of this series, Wanda's going to have to come to grips with the fact that Vision is gone and that there isn't a way to bring him back.
I think that's where I'm more leaning toward. My writer's brain, my resolve the story, this is something that I constantly need. And I tell Eric this all the time. The thing I hate about comics is that they never let people just die. That they're forced into this tortured infinite existence where they have to die over and over and over again. When you think about the actual like existence of a superhero and the way their universes are constantly rebooting and they have to relive the horror that like made them do the thing over and over and over again, it's pretty awful what we do to these fictional characters. So my hope beyond hope is that what this is leading up to is her having to process and let him go. And this, because this is literally like just another part of her. And I think that I think we're seeing that in this avatar that she's made of Vision is her conscience. That somewhere in there, like Vision, like for her, like makes her think of the best. That's like the best parts of her, right?
Right.
And she has to let him go. And I think that part of her that is inside Vision knows that, and because she can't, because even in her making a fictional version of Vision, she can't make he has to be the way that he was, and that was a good, beyond all else, good person,
right. A good being,
and he's like, no,
he was worthy to wield the hammer,
right? And there's no way that a person that good would be like, yeah, let's just keep up this facade. It's why he keeps fighting back, because she made him too.
She made him
much like the person. Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. And maybe she doesn't, and that's why she appears in Multiverse of Madness, because maybe she flees with this version of Vision into Multiverse of Madness, and Doctor Strange has to go around chasing her through different realities. I don't know.
Or she could go through different realities trying to find another version of Vision to replace the one she lost.
Yeah, very
a lot of different options when you deal with the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very Spider-Man, very into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, actually, because Kingpin is trying to bring his family back.
Which I thought that was a great like motivator and plot thing for Kingpin, because normally he's just a organized crime like bruiser thing, and I always love when villains are motivated by something human. Like Red Skull is motivated by just like power and dominance.
Someone's a Hail Hydra.
Yeah, Red Skull's just motivated by like power and dominance, but like Fisk in Spider-Verse was motivated by pain and loss and love.
There's a lot of that. I remember in Daredevil when they explored Kingpin's character in the comics. I mean, like his Achilles heel really is his wife and his family. Like his love for them is what seems to always like bring him to the point of ruin, because he will do anything for them, or to, in this case, bring them back.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Same thing in Netflix Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
Too. And like pretty much every version, right? That's like the fatal flaw in this villain is that he loves something. And I think similarly with Scarlet Witch, that she can't let go because she loves Vision so much. She finally found someone to do life with, and after losing her brother, now she found a lover, someone to be a partner with her. In being a twin is probably all the more traumatic, that she's used to being a duo,
right?
So yeah, it's interesting. So that's the episode.
Yeah.
I think all that's left is to rate the episode. Eric, I'm gonna let you go first, and I'm actually gonna pop out real quick because I need to use the restroom.
Okay.
I'm on water pills, so I have to go. Like when I have to go, I have to go.
All right. Well, I really enjoyed this episode. As I was saying at the beginning, I think this may be my favorite one thus far, just because it finally was answering so many of those questions and forming those connections with the Marvel Cinematic Universe as we know it. And so like that, it just really scratched an itch for me of like, okay, this show is really cool, but I want to know more. I want some answers. And finally we were getting that, and we were seeing the big picture, and it was just done in such a brilliant way. And as Maui was touching on earlier, of very comic booky way, by highlighting these secondary characters that we've come to know and love. Because one of my big pet peeves in comic book adaptations is when the source material has like a perfect character for this small role that you need in a film or a TV show, and the writers, for whatever reason, don't use them. You know, like that's one of the strengths of a shared universe, I think, is these characters that can intersect and enter each other's stories and influence each other in different ways. And I think this episode did a really good job with that, using Jimmy Woo and Darcy. So I really enjoyed this episode. I would say I would give it, I'm so bad at ratings. I don't know, 4.8 maybe, like pretty high. I really liked it.
I had a feeling that's where you were gonna go, Eric.
Yeah.
All right, Thomas.
I really liked it. I really, really liked it because it's doing all the like Eric said, it's doing all the things I want out of this series. And now 4 episodes in, like if it hadn't started doing that, I'd be like, okay, your reveals are gonna have to be even bigger. I had a professor in college who said, like, you know, if you start a show or a piece of theater at like if you already start at like a 5, by the end of the show, you're gonna have to fly. Even if it doesn't make sense within the story, you've built up such an expectation for the audience of this big payoff. And so if by this point we didn't start getting some answers about what's going on, they would have had to have given me some really big reveals in episodes 7, 8, and 9. You know what I mean? But so now that I've got that, I'm sort of placated, and I can like confidently tell people who are like a bit confused about MCU, or like, you know, maybe they're diving in to this having seen like Infinity War and Endgame, you know, as those big blockbusters. Because I think there's a huge group of fans, of new Marvel fans, who like saw Infinity War and saw Endgame and are into it, but haven't gone back and seen the other 20 films. Because it's daunting. But to watch a TV show is a lot less daunting. So I'm confident in going, great, if you watched the first 2 episodes of WandaVision and were like, I don't know, I'm telling you, watch up to episode 4, and I think you'll be hooked.
Yes, I think this is definitely the one that hooks the masses.
Yeah, that hooks the masses. Big comic book fans were hooked on episode 3. Everybody else is hooked on episode 4. For that reason, it's going to be, I'm not going to rank it as my highest, because it does fail my like standalone test of like, can you watch it out of context and like make it make sense? And no, because it like is the start of a brand new story. It's like another episode 1 that now runs parallel to the first. Right now we've got essentially the Maria Rambeau story. We've got a Wanda story, and now we've got a Maria Rambeau story. So I really think our 2 are moving forward. Our protagonists and antagonists are going to be Wanda and Maria. I'm sorry, Monica. Monica. And depending on whose perspective the episode is from, is going to change whether or not the audience thinks they're the protagonist or the antagonist. So I'm going to give it a solid 4. I mean, definitely my rankings go like 1, 2, 4, 3 at this point.
Yeah, I think before I was closer on Eric's side on one of the other episodes. This time I think I'm closer to what you just said, Thomas. I do think I dock it a little bit because it is basically everything you didn't know about episodes 1 through 3. I love the episode. Yes. But you know, if this was just a standalone episode, it would be kind of strange. You could have potentially made like a 1 hour episode where you showed all of this, episodes 1 through 4. You know, recut it a little bit and then added those extra bits in and moved forward. I dock it because the first 2 episodes I don't think are good enough to hook the masses. The 3rd episode, like you said, hooks the comic book fans. The 4th episode is like, oh, this is the thing that it's doing. Most of us that like obsess over this kind of stuff kind of knew where it was going, especially if you know the source material. Like I think we had an idea that it was going to be going in this kind of direction, that we would eventually see these things, but they didn't give enough to the audience. And I have seen a lot of backlash online from people, especially after the first 2 episodes. I saw that lessen a lot after the 3rd episode, and I've seen a lot of people actually kind of knocking it for taking this long to get this. And I feel like people have really short attention spans.
That is really what I think.
Yeah.
It's a
Because I'm loving it.
Yeah,
I'm loving just turning my brain off and going for the ride.
I think the pacing is absolutely fine.
So do I. So it's an interesting, push pull, but there's enough people saying things where I do have to kind of take that into account into my rating, because I'm seeing that, like, while this is palatable for me and I really enjoy it, if I were to recommend this to somebody, that it's probably not my highest rated episode, even though I probably had the most squee moments in this episode. Particularly with Darcy, with understanding what happens when you step through the energy field. It gave me enough of those, like, oh, super cool, moment.
Honestly, as much of a shock as it was, I think my favorite moment is the unsnapping, like seeing it happen in a hospital of all places. Like it opens up those questions again that everybody goes, like, what happened to people who were on airplanes?
Yeah.
What happens?
I wish they would address that. Yeah.
Yeah, in your lover's bed, and now there's somebody else there. Like those questions are so interesting, and I feel like that conversation will kind of open up again when more people watch.
I feel like there was a line in Endgame where they imply they're going to bring everyone back safely, whatever that means, but like it's never really explained. Okay, what if they are in like a dangerous situation? What if they're in midair? What if like it's standing in the same spot as another person is now occupying? Like there's all these questions, like you're saying, Thomas, that like when you're bringing people back into existence, like so many complications could happen, as we saw in this hospital scene.
So the safely part of the wish probably makes sure that people that were like, we were in an airplane and that airplane crashed, and like, so when they come back, they just come back on the ground about where they were.
Right. I mean,
I'm sure that kind of takes care of that. But
yeah, like I said, I would need to see the movie again. I might be misremembering that, but I thought
that
is
what he says. That's what Bruce said. He wished that everybody returned safely.
Okay.
Yeah, that is what he said. But it also makes me think, though, like, were there people that were like mid coitus? This, like,
there have to be law of large numbers. Like there absolutely had to be.
And like, was like one person like dusted and the other person was still there, and then so like years later they like pop back like, and nothing,
or
into nothing.
Or I think even weirder would be two people dusted at the same time, mid, and then they come back mid, and nothing changed for them. Like the house they're in is now, like the bed else. Or the bed is gone. Like the house has been looted or something.
They're like, we're not sure what happened, but let's finish first, and then we'll figure out what happened.
You don't have so many questions.
Right. But my rating, I digress. My rating for this week, I'm going to give this a 4.25. So 4.25. So in between the two of you this week. Really, really, really good episode, though. Really, really enjoyed it. I think that if people watch, especially people that were like impatient, if you go back to it and you watch the first 4 episodes to get, like, is a binge, because I also think people are just used to binging now. You'll probably get a lot more bang for your buck. Because you'll be chomping at the bit, and I think from here on out it's going to be a really, really fun show. I don't think they'll go back to just sitting entirely in the fiction. I think
at this point,
broken it.
I mean, for a little bit, but then we would want more.
Right. So I'm hoping the next week that we don't just stay like, I think that they're going more family ties in the next one. So like, but I'm hoping that like they don't stay completely in the fiction of the world the entire time, because I think we've moved past that. That worked for the first couple of episodes. We've moved too far past it. We need to show things breaking.
I think our next thing is going to be like another manned mission. Like I think it's going to be another incursion, knowing now that like when you're there, you don't know what's happening. Like you can't remember where you came from without like triggering. They're going to have to figure out a way to trigger them within the world. so that they can, attempt to get to Wanda, because now that now Monica has confirmed that like it's everything that's happening is Wanda Maximoff.
So I think maybe they can sometimes. The interaction between Herb and Agnes and Vision makes me think that if Wanda is far enough away or distracted enough that they get some semblance of autonomy back, because they're like, oh, she's here because, and he couldn't say it because Wanda's like, safety protocols wouldn't let
I definitely
him.
thought that was Agnes telling him to stop. Like, I thought that's why we cut back to her and she was like, don't do it.
And he was trying to say something, and then she was like, but like he couldn't. It felt like he almost couldn't finish the sentence, even if he wanted to.
I did not get that sense. I thought that was more.
You didn't get that?
No, I thought that was definitely Agnes. Like, no, doing that crosses the line. We can inquire, but we can't actively tell him.
Right, but that tells me that like when Vision and Wanda are not around, that maybe they're like, how do we get the fuck out of here? We're stuck. We can't leave. And when they're around us, we're forced to act like these goofy characters.
Right, but I don't think it's I think those are choices and not like not like a puppet master thing. It's just that Wanda has created this big world, and they're there, and they have I think they constantly have the awareness that they are playing, but but know that if they stop, she will hurt them. Like it's more a threat of violence versus a mind control thing that slips. That's just the sense I'm getting from the fact that Agnes and Herb were able to discuss it at all. If it were a mind control thing, I would think that it would be a more, just from the tropes of television in general, it would be a more revelatory moment as opposed to a conspiratorial moment.
What do you think, Eric? Eric, final word on this before we sign off.
Oh yeah, I would definitely agree with Thomas that it seems like they do seem to have autonomy when Wanda is not around, and it's entirely possible that in other parts of the town there are people that are completely cognizant of who they really are, but then as soon as Wanda walks by, oh hey, how's it going? I'm in a sitcom. We don't really know. We don't see what's happening in the rest of this town that she has co-opted at this point. So yeah, I would agree with that interpretation of it, that they may be more aware of what's happening than we even realize at this point.
Well, only way to find out is by tuning in next week. I want to thank Thomas and Eric for talking WandaVision with me. We are going to be back next week to talk about episode 5, whatever that may be. Like I said, I'm betting that it's going to be in the 80s. Be sure to check it out. Be sure to come back here and check us out. Thomas, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at tsquiz, TSQUIZZ42, tsquiz42 on Twitter if you want to shout at me. Also on Instagram as tsquiz42.
All right. And Eric, where can people find you?
I am on Facebook as Eric Lindbergh. I know there's a lot of them. There's many people with that name, but you can find me through Maui's friend list or contact me through the Reflect Media page.
There you go. And yeah, you can find me at All Things Reflect Media. You can find me at Maui Thoughts on Twitter and Mr. Maui Jones on Instagram. Thank you guys very much for hanging out with me today. And thank you, all our viewers, for watching our review. Thank you and good night.